We've had an increase in hate crime towards adults with disabilities in our area. We knew we had to do something about that. Got together with the members and we discussed all the different options that we had. They started suggesting to each other ways of keeping safe. We put that into a fold-away leaflet that somebody can take with them in their pocket, and it's a reminder about all the things that you can do to stay safe. And then other people started suggesting, well, maybe we should have alarms, we should learn some self-defence, de-escalation techniques. And it became the Safer Streets initiative. It's been so beneficial. The police got involved, we had our local safeguarding board, the council, and it's done so much good that I feel it needs to be replicated in other areas.
Well, Catrina, welcome to Disabled and Proud. I cannot believe we're finally here. We have been waiting for this for ages.
We have. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. And I'm so glad that we get to talk about you, because every time I see you, we're always talking about work and what your work is. But actually, I kind of want to make this episode a bit... Oh, excuse me. I've got really bad hiccups today, so they're going to come and go in waves. But I want to make this episode all about you and what you do and what you want to do as well, because I think you know that I love what you do. I love people first. Like, I'm a big fan. So it'll be so lovely to talk to you about that work, but also the other bits and pieces about you that not everybody always finds out.
Okay, thank you. That's really cool. Yeah, and I absolutely love the podcast, so it's awesome to be on here myself.
So let's just dive in with how did we meet? We met at NAIDEX last year because you work for People's First. And what is that for people who don't know? Okay,
so People First Keighley and Craven is an organisation that supports adults with learning disabilities and those who are neurodiverse, and it's an advocacy organisation. There are lots of People First all around the country, but they're all autonomous. They work on their own, but I kind of want to encourage more of us to work together. We've worked quite a lot with Bradford People First, and that's been really cool. So, so we support adults with learning disabilities, and the guys here decided that they wanted to have their own podcast, and they're absolutely flying with it, and they wanted to do one of the first live podcasts run and hosted by adults with learning disabilities, and they got to interview you, which was amazing. And then we met there. Yeah, it was lovely.
I know. I can't believe that it was over a year ago now, which feels absolutely wild.
Yes, it was. It feels like yesterday. But yeah, it was a special event, really, getting to see both Luke and Shannon, both of whom have their own disabilities. So Luke is blind, Shannon has issues with reading, and yet they both had their questions and, you know, had such a good podcast interview with you, and you were so kind and open with them. So it was a really big, important part of our organisation, really.
It was definitely a highlight of my NAIDEX last year. It was so lovely to share the stage with both of them, and I absolutely loved it. And we've kept in touch, which has been so nice, because I'm a massive supporter of People First, because I think what you guys do is great.
Thank you.
And I like this because it caveats so nicely into you and what your role is at People First and how you came to be involved with People First. How did that happen?
So I started volunteering around 7 years ago, and I did about an hour a week. I'd been disabled for a few years. I'd had a CSF leak, which meant that I wasn't able to do very much for about 16 months. And once that was dealt with surgery, I wanted to get back out into the community. Happened to meet some of the members and just felt like I had something that I might be able to contribute to their group. So I came as a volunteer once every week for an hour, and then slowly built up until now I'm running the organisation, which is wild to think about that. The volunteering led me here, but it's the work and it's the guys. Yeah, it's just so inspiring.
Yeah, and I love what you guys have created up there. Like, and I say up there because I'm nowhere up north, and for me, it is very much a travel up. And I absolutely love it because it's such a warm and welcoming environment. Like when I popped up to visit you guys for a little bit, it was so lovely. It's such a safe and friendly environment, and there's nothing about it that is sometimes. And I think you might be able to kind of understand where I'm coming from. When we're talking about adults with learning disabilities in a setting like People First, it can sometimes be seen as like daycare. And there's nothing, childlike about that, because first of all, we associate daycare with children because that's where they go when they're little and they have to be looked after by adults. And there's nothing about People First that is that same similar kind of area, which is so lovely, because allowing disabled people to be themselves first and foremost is the best thing in the entire world, right? But also allowing people who do need support to be able to be themselves, but supported to be themselves, is actually incredible. And it's an incredible environment that you guys have. And I love coming up and seeing what you guys are up to, because you guys are always doing something new and something fun. It's crazy.
Well, thank you for that. That means a lot to me. It's really just about accepting people as they are. So some of the members absolutely love Disney and they love all those kind of things, and then other members don't and find it infantilizing. Is that the word?
Yeah.
When we would talk about that, so it's just treating people on their level, and I think we talk about that line when it comes to like easy read documents, things like that, how they're pitched to people with learning disabilities, because often people go down the route of making it quite cartoony, and that can feel like it's for children. So we work on giving them the confidence to say when they're uncomfortable, and sort of sharing that. And when something makes them feel like they're being treated like a child, having the confidence to say something or to tell somebody else how they're feeling. Yeah.
And it's so important. But I'm going to come back to you, because you said that you had a CFS leak. Now, for those who don't know what that is, what is it?
So it's a CSF leak, and it was because when I had surgery for my cord recliner, I then had further surgeries for T-lift surgeries, which are to stabilise the spine. And during that surgery, I got some small tears, which meant the cerebral spinal fluid was leaking. And yeah, it wasn't very nice at all. I was in bed for about 16 months, all told. If I sat up or tried to move about, I'd either be sick or faint. I was really, really poorly. But I got the surgery, and very lucky.
So I have known you now for just over a year, year and a bit. And that's the first time I have ever heard you speak about that. And the fact that you were so unwell and now you do what you do is kind of, it's such a beautiful journey, because like you said, you were like pretty unwell for 16 months. And that can feel like such a long time when you can't you can't get up, you can't do even like the most basic of tasks feels like a real mission. And now look at you, like running People First. You've literally gone from not being able to even get a drink, because even that movement would be too much, to making sure that everybody else around you has everything that they need. Like, isn't that beautiful?
Thank you. I think I didn't know what was going to happen, and it felt like I didn't know whether anything would ever change. So I promised myself that if things did change and the surgery went well, that I would make absolutely the most out of the time that I have. And I've just stuck to that.
Yeah. I love that. I really love that, because I've already waxed lyrical about how much I love People First, but I think the job that you guys do is so good. And maybe it's because, like, outside of doing this podcast, we're in very similar fields. And I think that what you guys is really, it should really be showcased as excellence, particularly in the learning disability field, because I think some people can get it so wrong, but you guys have got it so right. And that's so obvious through, like, the members who come to People First, because everybody loves being there.
Well, that's really kind of you to say, but I think what we do is we do feedback at the end of every single day, and we say, what did we do today? How did it make us feel? And then how can we make tomorrow better? And for a little while, people weren't doing that final one, which is really important when it comes to advocacy. Is saying the things that might be a little bit uncomfortable. So we started using these cards that had different types of feelings on. And then we say, did something make you feel uncomfortable today? Did something make you feel sad? And it's the same with the organisation. We are constantly trying to get better. And I don't feel like we're there at the top yet or anything. You know, we've got lots to learn from other groups as well. But we're just trying our best. And that's enough.
You guys are smashing it. Like, I don't think you guys realise how good you are. But that's just me being me. That's
Thank
me
you.
bigging people up. But something that you do, which I think is incredible, is wheelchair dancing. Now, how did you get involved in that? Because I cannot dance for toffee. I am so mal-coordinated that it's actually painful. And I have been told that before by many a dance teacher in some of the dance sessions that I go to. It is embarrassing. I'm the girl at the back who can't clap her hands, but here we are. But you do wheelchair dancing. I think you also teach as well. How did that come about?
So before I became disabled, I was a dancer. I went to Roehampton University in London to study dance. And it was in my third year that I had the cord recliner compression that meant that I couldn't finish the practical element of the last year. And then when the feeling and use of my legs went down so much, I didn't think that I had a place in dance anymore. And I think it was because I'd come up in an era when the teachers would, and this wasn't at Roehampton, and this is when I was a child, the teachers would sort of get on your back as you were sort of leaning forward to try and touch your toes. You know, if you're straddling and forward, and they would push you down. And the phrase, if it's not hurting, you're not doing it right, was said. So my experience of dance was very focused on the aesthetic. And when I became disabled, I just felt like the dance world wasn't for me anymore. And it was like a grief. It was really, really difficult, because that's what I saw my life was being involved in dance in some way or another. And it wasn't until after the CSF leak where I got this feeling of I'm making the most of every possible opportunity. Yeah. Where I decided I wanted to dance again because I wanted to be happy and feel joy again and get that buzz from movement, that the feeling that only dance can give me. Reconnecting with that through Northern Ballet, through their incredible Expressions festival, was how I came back to dance. And then they offered me an artist in residence post. So on Sundays during during like the early spring time of the year, I work at a Northern Ballet on Sundays, teaching wheelchair ballet called In Motion.
Oh, I just think that that's so gorgeous. Oh,
Thank you.
oh, see, my hiccups have gone, so that's great.
That's
Clearly,
good. That's a
like,
good thing.
I'm really focused on this interview, which is great for both of us because they were loud beforehand. But I think that is something that you said there is that only the feeling that dance could give you, and I think everybody kind of has that thing. And as you said, dance was kind of your trajectory before you became disabled, and like you went to uni for dance. Now people don't just go to uni for dance if they don't see their life being that, right? Because the dancer's world is quite harsh, and like you must really love it to go and study it, because you know it's setback after setback, and then it's like your big final break, and you know it's the life of an artist really. But you said that only the feeling that dance could give you, and you hadn't experienced that whilst like in your journey of becoming disabled, and then you kind of found it again. And what was that moment like when you first kind of found out about wheelchair ballet and wheelchair dance?
It was it almost felt spiritual, to be completely honest. It was incredibly emotional. I cried the whole way back from the dance session, because it had completely been a revelation to me. And there's something about being in a wheelchair and just, you know, going as fast as you can. You feel like you're flying. And, you know, I'd not had that sensation of going fast since when I would run before I was disabled. And it was such a special moment. And never did I think that it would then become part of my career again, or that I would ever perform again. But I have been able to perform again, which was incredible. And it's sort of telling the story within me that words just wouldn't be able to share. So the first piece that I choreographed was called Paralysed, but it's got a question mark. Because the only time where I've really truly felt paralysed was when I'd lost hope, when I'd been in the bed for 16 months and I was struggling and I didn't know what was going on, didn't know what would happen to me. And that was paralysing. And I think it gave me an appreciation for understanding people who have panic attacks and anxiety, and how paralysing that can be. And you could see somebody standing next to me who looks like they don't have a disability, and yet inside they're paralysed. And I think that was why it was important to do that piece of dance with my dance partner, Kim, so that people could start thinking about the way we treat each other. Often people will offer help to me because I'm in a wheelchair, and yet she can be stood next to me and she could have had the worst day ever, and nobody would extend a hand to her as they would to me. And I just think it's an important statement on disability and humanity, really.
It almost sounds like it was kind of your first piece of activism. Not like loud and in your face activism, because I think activism can kind of get a bit of a bad rep, because I think as soon as you say like I'm a disability activist, they think that you are marching in the streets of Parliament, you're screaming your head off, like you have pitchforks and you have fires and you're chasing people. And actually I think there's such a range of what activism is, but even, you know, even putting a piece together that kind of flips like your association of the word paralysed on its head, and being able to explore that's also activism, right? Because it's not just all about activism with a capital A. There's also activism without the big capital.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a few months ago we were working with Dr. Lucy Series, who does a lot of work on human rights and things, law to do with adults with learning disabilities. And something she said was that the work we do is love-fueled activism, which I just loved. And I think that's it. Any of the change that we're trying to make, or the things that we're trying to say, it comes from a place of love.
And that kind of also goes back to the entire ethos of People First, right? Because being able to have those conversations at the end of the day, you know, with what can we do to make it better? We're not saying that out of spite. We don't want to upset anyone. We want to make sure that we get it right. And sometimes that can be like tough love, which is also still love, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it all really beautifully ties together. And I actually think that like your journey is you're someone who is very, very like set in doing things from the heart. I don't believe that you don't do anything that doesn't come from the heart. And I know you well enough to know that that's like a factual thing, right? But all of your journey and all of the activism, it's all really heart led. And actually, for me personally, I think that's where the biggest change is, because I think small change is actually sometimes more impactful than big change. You know, big change is amazing and big change is great, but actually it's those small incremental changes day by day, that 1% better actually adds up way quicker than like, hey, here's a big fat thing we're going to do and we're going to change the face of history. And then it changes the face of history for like all of 2 months. And then everyone's like, oh, I didn't really do anything, did it?
Yeah, I completely agree. I feel that when I became manager, I would think about all the big projects that we wanted to do. And I kind of got it the wrong way around. I was thinking of it as, we're going to do this, we're going to go to Parliament, we're going to make these big changes. But actually the most meaningful things were, somebody was in a wheelchair that was actually painful for them, and they needed support to have, you know, be an advocate for themselves and get something new. And there's all sorts of little things that there's lots of different examples of those little changes that were more important than this grand scheme. Now, what we've been able to do using the framework, the self-advocacy framework that we've created, is trying to support people to make those small changes, advocating for the little things that they want and need, so that when somebody comes who wants lived experience about topics such as healthcare, they've got a base of confidence that they've gained through advocating for those small things to use in a bigger platform, should they want to.
Yeah. Oh God, it's like I do this professionally sometimes. The caveat is absolutely seamless. I know we've just spoken about small change, and I think I've just completely ruined my words there. I think they were all just sound, so I'm going to repeat that. I know that we have just spoken about small change and small change being important, but something we have spoken about is legislation, and something that you are working on or trying to put together is some form of legislation that will change the lives of adults with learning disabilities. Now, I think you are the perfect person to talk about this, because you know what it is, and you're very, very good at explaining what it is that you're trying to change. And what is that?
So we've had an increase in hate crime towards adults with disabilities in our area. And we knew we had to do something about that. So I got together with the members and we discussed all the different options that we had. They started suggesting to each other ways of keeping safe. And what we did was we put that into a fold-away leaflet that somebody can take with them in their pocket, and it's a reminder about all the things that you can do to stay safe. And then other people started suggesting, well, maybe we should have alarms, and maybe we should we should learn some self-defense, de-escalation techniques. And it became the Safer Streets initiative. And we've had 2 big events that have really dived into how we can keep people with learning disabilities safe on the streets. And it's been so beneficial. The police got involved. We had our local safeguarding board, the council, and it's done so much good that I feel it needs to be replicated in other areas, because we are seeing more people with disabilities being targeted. You know, there's all this repealing of DEI, and there just feels to be an anti-disabled rhetoric that seems to be it seems that people can say those things online now that they would only just think before. Something's emboldened them.
I wholeheartedly agree with what you've just said about saying things online. And the reason that I've dived in is because yesterday it was brought to my attention that a particular female who has been quite prominent on TV and is just controversial the entire time, I'm not going to say her name, I'll tell you who it is afterwards if you haven't seen the videos, went on a 10 video rampage as to why she hates seeing disabled people on TV. And these are not just like teeny tiny videos, they're huge. And the reason that I bring it up is because she went on for ages about people with limb differences, and obviously like I'm limb different, and she was visibly retching at the fact that people with limb differences had their different limbs out. And I think you're so right, there is such something has emboldened people to be able to think that that's okay, and that's exactly where like the problem is that don't get me wrong, freedom of speech exists, but freedom from consequences doesn't.
Exactly. I would fight for a person's right to call me any name under the sun, but I would also fight for the right to say something right back to them.
Yeah, exactly that. And you're so right when you're talking about like the anti-DE&I rhetoric. I think there's a massive push at the minute to become like anti-disabled, which like in and of itself is actually like an oxymoron, because like that doesn't make any sense like at all. And also, like, side note, you're going to become disabled at some point during your life if you live long enough, so what the hell are you doing?
Exactly. And it's really sad that people are living in that frame of mind, but we have to accept that that's what's happening at the minute. And what we've done is we've created Safer Streets, and it's given us a sense of taking control back. It's given us a feeling of preparing for the worst, but trying to encourage the best out of people. And I think it would be really good if other councils took it on.
So when you're talking about Safer Streets, what does this entail? So obviously you said that there's like a foldaway leaflet that people can grab, but what are the other bits and pieces that are components of this?
So it's a whole workshop. It's a whole workshop. So you start talking about all the ways in which we can make ourselves feel safer, and then we talk about what happens should you not feel safe. What would you do then? And then if you witness something, what do you do then? And then, if something happens to you, having a plan of knowing who would be around to help you, where you could go, where are safe places, where are places that aren't as safe, and just arming people with information. I think sometimes with people with learning disabilities, a general population may fear having those difficult conversations when it comes to things like sex, when it comes to death, when it comes to safety. Those are difficult conversations to have but they're adults who live in this world, who need to be prepared. And our guys are showing that you can be aware of all these things and still live a happy life. I think it's when you don't prepare somebody when problems arise. And it's like with relationships. If people with learning disabilities aren't supported to have normal, healthy relationships, sexual relationships, then they're going to have abnormal ones. And that can easily go down a really dark path. But it's because nobody's, having the conversations and giving the support to have a normal romantic life. And that's a minority, but it's just another example of how people aren't engaging adults with learning disabilities as adults.
I really love what you said there about engaging with adults with learning disabilities, because I was at a premiere of a documentary that came out, and it was all about disabilities. And one of the massive critiques of this documentary was that the learning disabled voice was not included at all. And yet we're talking about disability, so it should be. And I think you're right. I think people are really scared. I think people are really scared to have conversations, because there is a line between infantilization and supporting someone to understand when things are tricky. And you're right, like conversations about safety, conversations about sex, conversations about paying a bill, they can all be tricky conversations. They can be tricky conversations for me, and I'm, I don't have a learning disability, like I'm neurodiverse, so these conversations can be a bit squiffy, but I don't need someone to help me to support that kind of situation. And I think it's almost scared of, how do you support someone in that situation? Because how do you support someone if you don't know how to do it, right? Or you don't know how to have these conversations, or you don't know how to, quite British thing, like deliver awkward news. And I think we kind of get a bit caught up in that, don't we? Where it's like, oh, can I, can't I, how do I, am I allowed to say this, that, and the next thing? And actually, it's much better to say it and get it wrong, and have a conversation where it's like, hey, that was a bit not right. We can adjust this, and this, and then it's much better than to not say anything at all.
I agree. I think it's really tricky, but everybody should be dealt with on an individual basis, and just deal with that person for what they need, and communicating with them how they need to be communicated with. I've seen, like, there's been like people online who say that they don't like the word disabled, and then some people don't like the word differently abled. And I just kind of think that if you just let people refer to themselves however they want to be referred to, and don't scold, because when I became disabled, I didn't like the word, because to me the dis and then able was synonymous with not able, because disagree means not agree.
Yeah.
Disorganized means not organized. So to me, that's what it meant. And it wasn't until I learned about the social model of disability that I realized it was the environment not allowing me to do those things, that was making me not able to get up some stairs without a ramp, that kind of thing. But I see people being quite disparaging to those who use like differently abled terms, and it shuts down conversation. It's saying, no, you can't say that, you shouldn't say that. And actually, can't we have conversations and just agree that we can disagree about these things, and And it doesn't mean that we're any less an advocate for disability. You know, however we refer to ourselves. And I just, and I feel like that's the kind of thing that you were saying is people end up going into their own camps and just not having those tricky conversations. And I worry that people who don't have disabilities get so frightened about saying the wrong thing that they don't say anything at all. Yeah. And I don't want that to happen. So, yeah, I think honest conversations are important.
I also think you've touched on something that's also really important there, is that the entirety of the disabled community do not believe the exact same thing at the exact same time.
Yes.
You know, we don't all have like a homogenized view of how disability should be. And that itself is also really important. And I think the way that I see it is that for so long, society treated disabled people all as one thing. They didn't realize that actually disability and being disabled is actually a massive umbrella term for a whole host of different things. You know, it's every color of the rainbow, it's every human being, it's so many different things. It's not just physical, you know, not necessarily apparent, it's not just neurodiversity, it's not learning disability. Like there is so much that the word disabled like covers, that how can we all have the same opinions about things, and how can we all agree about the same things? And it's absolutely fine to also not agree about these things and have these conversations. And I think, you know, something that we've spoken about already today is actually just having those open and honest conversations, even if they feel uncomfortable, because nobody grows if you're not slightly uncomfortable. Like it's called, and I say this all the time, and I'm so sorry if people have heard this before, but it's called growing pains for a reason. It's not meant to be comfortable, you know. No. When you stretch something, like when you get your legs grow, it isn't comfortable because they're stretching. Like, and that's also how the mind works. When your mind is stretched for the first time, it doesn't feel great.
Yeah.
But that's how you have healthier conversations. It's how you grow. It's how you're able to kind of react to society a bit better. And something that you said, which I would love to touch on, is that when you first became disabled, you really didn't like the term disabled. And do you think that was because of the lack of exposure to disability in society?
It was an internalized ableism, I guess. And my life had surrounded by about me being a dancer, my body being able, and suddenly to say that it was disabled was really tricky and hard for me to deal with. But yeah, it's like as soon as I started talking to others with disabilities, I started to learn so much. And I wish somebody had told me about the social model of disability and the difference between that and the medical model, because we're kind of expected to know all those kind of things as soon as you become disabled. And it's such a big change. It's such a loss. But you're also gaining something as well, is what I've learned, is that I actually gained quite a lot by becoming disabled. And it was an ability to look at things differently and an appreciation and a gratitude. I found it difficult being called disabled, but it was the word that identified to other people that I had needs that needed to be met, and that was the word to use. I don't like it when people say you can't say this or you can't say that. It worries me. For example, somebody came up to me recently and was, "You all right there, love? Would you like a push?" And some people might find that really problematic, especially because he put his hands on my wheelchair without asking. But there are times when I need help, and that gentleman was just trying to be helpful. And if he'd have been, if I'd have said, that's really not okay of you to do that, imagine the next disabled person he meets and that person really needs help, but he doesn't want to engage because he's had a bad experience before and he thinks that he shouldn't. And I just think there's so much grey area.
Yeah.
I just think it's important that we speak for ourselves and not for the community at large.
You are so bang on when you say there's so much grey area, because disability is so individual, right? And how one person might react to one disability is going to be wildly different to how they react to another. And I say this again, I say this all the time. If you had two people with the exact same disability on paper, how they relate to their disability, how they talk about their disability, how their disability affects them, whether it does, whether it doesn't, is going to be two completely different things, even though it's the exact same, like, diagnosis on paper. And I think we as in society, not necessarily the disabled community, because we understand that society doesn't quite grasp that yet. I think people still think it's just one size fits all, and actually, like, one size fits all never works for anyone.
No,
it never does.
And it's absolutely okay to sort of state your boundaries as well. That's really important. I think it's just maintaining that kindness and an explanation that I don't like. I really don't like having my wheelchair touched, but others may. Or, it's just sharing that. It's just sharing something based on your own experience and feeling, I think. I'm just going to get a drink.
I also really love what you said about you having to find out about things when you became disabled. Like, you had to find out about the social model of disability. You had to find out the medical model of disability. These were not things that were presented to you. You weren't told, hey, like, and I say, oh God, I know I've said this way too many times today, but it's not like when you become disabled, if you acquire a disability, you're given a handbook that's like, hey, these are some feelings that might come up. This is a medical model of disability. This is a social model of disability. And also, here's like a little snippet of disability history just to get you started. That kind of like workbook doesn't exist. And actually, I think even if it was to exist, as soon as you printed it, it would be out of date immediately.
Yeah.
But it kind of, I said something the other day, and it was profound for me. I rarely say things that are like super profound, but this was one of those moments I had, and I was like, oh my goodness. But I was talking about ableism, and I was talking about how for my entire life I've been disabled, right? But I had to find out what ableism was. Nobody told me what it was. Nobody told me that I might experience it. Nobody told me what this kind of like icky feeling was when someone was rude to me based on my disability. And it's very similar to that, having to find out for yourself, because you have to search for these things when you're disabled. It's not like I said, you don't get a handbook, you don't get, a workbook, you don't get like a little sheet, you get nothing. You're kind of told, well, welcome to the club. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. You have to learn those things, and it's quite sad. But I think for me, the time when I felt that the most was when I'd gone on BBC News, and I was sharing information about Cauda-Equina syndrome, which is when the disc goes onto the spinal cord, and it causes spinal cord damage. And that's what I had, and I had it twice. And I was on there trying to encourage people to get the symptoms checked out quickly, because the longer you leave it, if you leave it over, I think it's 72 hours, I'm not quite sure, but I think it's 72 hours, you're more likely to have long-term damage. And so I went on the BBC News, and I was sharing all this information with the Cauda-Equina Champions charity, and I got the most horrible messages. I got messages like, oh, she can't walk, but she can get to the fridge. Things like, well, I had a lot of people telling me that I should just take my own life because I was costing the NHS too much. I had, of course, she's got a bad back because she's so big. There was just so many horrible, vile messages that I got. And I was just trying to encourage other people to get checked out quicker because I didn't want them to end up be, in the same position that I am. And to each of them, I sent a reply, and I can't remember exactly what I said, but I think it was along the lines of, I'm really sorry you're in a place, such a dark place, that made you send that message, and I really hope that you come out of that soon. Something like that.
And that takes
so sad.
so much strength. That takes so much strength for you to be able to send that to someone, because the easy thing to do would be to clap back, right? The easy thing would be like, F you, like, and that's kind of almost like the knee-jerk reaction. But actually, like, I think you need to be commended for your strength in that, because it takes so much strength for you to be like, hey, like, I'm really sorry that you feel that way, but I hope you
you're
get
okay.
the help that you need, because clearly something's not quite right. Because if I've upset you that much, something's not balanced somewhere.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Just having those hard conversations about why people are being so vile are things that we need to talk about as a country. And how we support them.
I 110% agree with you, and I think actually I could probably do like a 5-hour rant on that. Like, it wouldn't take much. But I feel like there's a lot of people who also feel that exact same way as well. And again, this kind of circles back to what we were saying earlier about having the difficult conversations and having conversations that aren't comfortable, because you don't grow if you're not uncomfortable. But then there is, there's a kind of like a limit to being uncomfortable and then just being a dick. Some people haven't learned the difference yet.
No, they haven't. They need to learn.
Oh, I know. I think I'd make it like mandatory in schools if I was like head of education. But then I also think that I wouldn't do very well in that job, because I would just tell everyone what I thought of them, and then it would be a bit of a nightmare, and we'd probably have no friends as a country. I'm actually a really lovely person in real life. But I actually really want to say thank you to you today, because I think you've spoken about some really vulnerable topics, and actually you've spoken about them with such grace, and like I said earlier, like, everything that you say is always so heart-led. Nothing that you say ever comes out of malice, and it's not like you're trying to clap back at anyone, and like your entire journey is all about being heart-led, and I love that, because I love what you do. I think that you're great. I think what you do is great, and like I feel like you need to be told that, because sometimes it's really difficult to hear praise from other people, right? Sometimes it's a bit like, oh, like, it's just what you do, it's just like who I am, it's just what I do, blah blah blah. But no, I think you need to kind of sit in that, and I just want to say thank you so much for coming on today and speaking about these topics and having this conversation, because it's not easy, and you've just spoken with such grace that I've absolutely loved it, and my hiccups have stopped, so I think that says everything.
Thank you so much. That means so much to me. I think for the future, I really hope that I can encourage more people to get out and dance, because that's really, really important. So I would like to say that we were at NADEX this year again, Kim and I sharing a joyful movement workshop, which was really cool, and hopefully we will get the chance to do that again next year. And I really hope that your listeners will come and join us if we do get that chance again. And we're going to be doing lots of different workshops to try and encourage people with disabilities, or even those without disabilities but have some barriers that are stopping them from going to their local class, to come and join us. And even if you don't move, you can sit and be part of the energy, part of our dance floor. I feel very lucky to be doing this work at the weekends. I hope people come and join us.
Yeah. I have absolutely loved this conversation. I'm usually super... best way that I describe myself is I'm a bit like champagne, like I'm always a bit fizzy. But I feel like this conversation has really grounded me and really centered me, and I've absolutely loved it because I've learned so much about people first. I already knew what you guys did, but I love it even more, and I didn't even think that was possible. But also I've learned more about you, and I think that you're fab, and I think what you do is fab. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing part of your story.
Thank you. Ditto, by the way.
And no. See, that is me being like semi-vulnerable because I'm like, I don't like compliments. Ha ha ha. Anyway.
But look what you've done. You've got people who have disabilities to be talking in an in-depth way. And that is such a useful tool, not just for us in the disabled community, but for when somebody gets a disability. There is this resource. This is a resource that people use. And it is a little bit like a guidebook to, these are the things that you might experience. These are the feelings that you might get. And it's okay. And you're making that okay. And you're bringing people together in a way that hasn't been done before. And I really appreciate that. So thank you.
Oh, thanks. I really appreciate that. I've loved this so much. I think we should do another podcast at some point in time. But I think we should do a live one. I think how much fun would that be?
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
And I'm going to leave it there and let all you lovely listeners think about how great that would be.